3 different people today have asked me about the same subject, which leads me to think maybe I should make a video about it. So I'll give a bit of trigger warning here, as I've done in some other videos. What I'm talking about here is deep stage realization. It's actually very deep stage, meaning many people this won't necessarily apply to right now. And the trigger warning really is that this can be really unsettling to some people. Some people watch it and they're fine with it, even if it's not really their experience. I've had other people that find it kind of disturbing. So just understand that once you're in this space, you have a very different kind of instinct. You know it's okay even if it doesn't feel okay. So the ways I'm going to be talking about this are very direct. I don't want to freak anyone out unnecessarily. So if you're working on First Awakening or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but of course it's up to you. So this topic I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to call it existential terror, for lack of a better way of saying it. It's actually really hard to put a label to what this is because it's not even an emotion. It's very deep. It's very, very primal. And the setting is really people who are working through or moving through the space where the subtle self-sense dissolves. I don't mean the belief in there being a separate self cognitively. I don't mean the experience of having the self dissolve into consciousness or being. I'm talking about something very different than all of that. I'm saying the container of experience, the collator of experience, the one that feels like it's moving from moment to moment is dying away. It's seen actually if the subtle self-sense has already fallen, it's seen that that's just not there, never has been there, never could be there. So just to summarize this for the talk I'm going to give here is what it's like is every coping mechanism you ever thought you had, no matter how functional or dysfunctional or readily available or sometimes not available, are just gone. They're just gone. There's nothing to mitigate experience anymore at all. That means mitigate inner experience, outer experience. Essentially, there is no inner experience. There's no inner world. There's no sense of any self at all, including the universal self or the conscious self or the self in communion with God or beingness. All of it is seen to be a false construct. And this is not a cognitive seeing through. It's an energetic seeing through. It runs as deep as anything runs. Moreover, anyone who's going through this or has gone through this recently knows that it's not just the self that disappears or the things we identify with being a self or the ideas about self. What goes away is everything, all of it, specialness, the world, the inner world, the outer world, the ability to step back from experience and reflect on it, meaning that experience is for me. There's no me for that to be about anymore. So there's no one to reject experience. There's no one to enjoy experience. There's no one to desire experience. It's just gone. So a lot goes away with this. And there are other videos on this. I've made videos before. Suzanne Chang made a nice video about it. Many people have. Adyashanti's talked about it. So it's not unknown or unheard of, but it's the kind of thing, unless you're approaching it, it's very hard to even hear what I'm talking about because every coping mechanism you've ever had, every belief you've ever had, every distraction you've ever had has actually been there. And every way you've ever thought about yourself, including in a spiritual way, especially in a spiritual way at this point, all of that is seen to be a complete and utter illusion. This is, in one sense, you could say the next step beyond realization of formless non-duality. So there's no, you don't even have an apparatus or tools to work in this space to make yourself feel slightly better. It's just not there. It feels like the most helpless, energetic flail in one way of speaking. You have nowhere to go and nowhere to be. Experience is so full on, meaning sense field experience is so full on, it's killing you every single moment. The sound destroys you. The sensations destroy you. The fear destroys you. So what we're talking about is that part right there where there's still just a little something trying even though there may not be no self-structure whatsoever, there's something trying to make itself feel better still. The sense that it's almost like the tendency that needed to build a self, to create an identity, to create the illusion of separation, to create a world, to create a story and narrative, all of that was built on this fundamental tendency, for lack of a better way of saying it, to escape. To escape what? To escape this complete death. This sort of infinite death. I know it sounds terrible, right? But it's so beautiful once it's integrated. But the integration process here can be really unsettling, for lack of a better way of saying it. There's no descriptors for it. It's such a deep letting go. It's the deepest letting go. It's letting go of everything. Every hope, every possibility for you. All of it. Spirituality, specialness of spirituality, specialness of the spiritual journey and the journeyer. It just goes completely away. Which also, by this time, almost always feels completely natural. Feels completely lawful. Like it has to, it's just very obvious energetically at this point that this is just has to be this way. There's not a way for this not to be, which adds to the sense of helplessness, right? You see that like all of that was built, all those strategies, all the beliefs, all this, even the sense of being a structured experience is just gone and you can't have it back, right? So it's the ultimate letting go. And there's no one doing it, and there's no one that can decide to let go, and there's no one that can resist letting go. So it's kind of an obliteration. Yeah, you can see why this was started by a trigger warning. So as this is happening, it can happen. This can happen after that. It's actually in one sense, it's an extremely subtle shift, a subtle change in the energeto-cognitive process, whatever. But the implications are big. So you might sense this kind of existential dread, existential fear, or this feeling of just like very fundamental not okay, even though you know it's not emotion, it's not a thought, it's none of that stuff. And then you almost wish not that you wish, but you can see how those are what actually prevented you from experiencing this, the thoughts and emotions and storylines and narratives and distractions and even spiritual practices, right? You know that now. And so it's kind of like lights out, right? Game over. And it's at the energetic level. The energetic body has to adjust to this in a way. So it can happen again, like you can get these tastes of this sort of, you might even feel it very, very physically. One of the people I talked to today was talking about it in a very physical way, but the more I talked to her, the more I realized what she was talking about. And it, heart racing suddenly out of the blue, but you're in such direct experience, you're not even recognizing like this is fear, this is panic. But still you can sense something unsettling in it, right? Or it could feel just like abject fear, but the difference, I want to try to describe why I'm calling it existential terror. It feels almost like something so primal that it's almost maybe the first emotion you ever experienced as you became a self, as a very small child. The feeling that like there's nothing here to protect you at all. There's not even a you here to be protected. It's just almost like a random energy feeling. An energy with no direction, an energy that can't be controlled, an energy that doesn't become something, doesn't become someone ever. It's kind of like raw will, but the will doesn't know where to go. It has no self to form itself into or to push or to inflate or to get distracted by. So it's kind of like it doesn't know where to put itself, that energy. It just feels unsettled. Yeah. So I'm trying to give the sense of it, but anyone who's listening to this, the people I talk to will know exactly what I'm talking about. And the reason I'm laughing is because, this doesn't last forever. It's not, it's a transitional period, I suppose. But yeah, some people after the self-sense drops, they feel like this for a while. And it's, in one way of speaking, it's the most unsettling thing you've ever experienced. And it's also this kind of big surprise in a very strange way. And again, it's still paradoxically, it's just what's happening, what's going to happen, what has to happen, completely natural. So what do you do here? That's what the video is about, right? This is the answer to the question. What do you do? Well, there's very little you can do, if anything. So let me break it down a little bit. First thing to know about this is it's totally normal. You kind of already know this, but just for you to hear it from me may be helpful. Like, I've been through it. I've seen people go through it. I've felt the experience of going through it with someone more than once. And it's just got to work itself out. There's like really nothing I can do. And they know there's nothing I can do, and there's nothing they can do. It's that kind of abject helplessness, right? That's a big part of it. And that can be helpful. But just because you can't do anything to control it or change it or whatever, it's a process unto itself that's going to happen. It's very natural. That is true. At the same time, noticing certain things I have found to be helpful. So for instance, I could tell you, notice as you're going through this that there can still be very subtle thoughts. And those are, in this space, far more far more uncomfortable, because there's not fixation here anymore. You can't even have fixation. You can't have fixation to make yourself feel better by fixating somewhere, even though it's delusion, right? So it's like, it's just a bit of a background belief that something's not okay, that I'm not okay, that this is not okay, that I can't handle this. I know these are very conventional sounding beliefs, like things you might look at earlier on in realization. But if you just remind yourself that there could be some background beliefs here hanging around, sometimes that helps, just to notice, like, oh yeah, there's just this little sliver, this tendency toward this belief that says, this is too much for me. But very quickly you can dispel that when you see, well, there's no me that this is too much for, and that part's obvious to you now. So too much is a kind of a judgment. And you also know you're experiencing it. There's no mitigation. There's nothing in between. There's no space. So it can't be resisted. And, it's not too much. It's not too much. It's not enough, as it's not in that realm. So sometimes just noticing these little background beliefs that are still causing an unsettling experience, because hopefully pretty quickly you start to realize the fundamental experience of no self itself is not unsettling at all. Not in the least. Just like earlier lessons, like an emotion is not a problem in and of itself. It's the resistance to it that causes all the trouble. Even a thought is not a problem in and of itself. It's the reaction to thought. It's the pushing and pulling, or we could call it resistance to thought. That's what causes all the trouble. Same thing here, except it's at an energetic level. So the most subtle thoughts here, if they're not recognized, can really create a vibrating discomfort that's not fully necessary, I suppose. So I think looking at beliefs can be helpful here. Just recognizing, like, do I have a belief in the background that says too much? I can't handle this. Or sometimes we even have very specific beliefs that are practical in nature, of like, if I keep feeling like this, if I feel like this tomorrow, I won't be able to go to work or something, right? If we notice that, oh, okay, yeah, I actually have these conventional beliefs that are just sticking around a little bit, and they're distorting this experience. When the experience is undistorted, you can fully embody it. And the way you fully embody it is through physical sensation. When this is a purely physical sensation, it won't be a problem for you. When it's a physical sensation with something trying to reify a self that doesn't exist, or trying to hold on to a belief that's absurd, it's not going to be comfortable. Yeah. So you could say this is like, in one way of speaking, the 9th versus the 10th fetter, or like the way Kevin Chanelek describes the fetters. 9th fetter is very restless, right? It's that restlessness. The 10th fetter is ultimately looking at what the beliefs are that cause us to see things in a way that they aren't, for lack of a better way of saying that. It's hard to talk about that. But it's not like things are a certain way and we need to see it. It's kind of the other way around. We're trying to see things a certain way that just isn't right. And that causes, in this energetic space, it causes a lot of unsettled experience, or unsettling experience, or discord or something. But it's, again, it's very primal. So looking at beliefs are very helpful here. And just, as always, same as early realization and pre-awakening, noticing the difference between a thought and belief and your immediate experience is helpful. And the more you drop right into the physical sensations, and it may be kind of wild. You may have kundalini, you may have shaking body, you may feel like a lot of sensations, a lot of energy flowing, blockages breaking open, or you might not, but to get down to the pure experience of sensation with no labels, not even fear, not even existential fear, existential dread, not beliefs like I can't handle this, or maybe I can't handle this, or what if this keeps going, or noticing that it's not those thoughts that are your primary experience, it's the sensations. So if you feel the sensation, the whole experience of sensation purely, without any thoughts at all, and just, you got to give your body to this. That's the thing. And maybe that's the most fundamental avoidance we have, is like giving, and at this point, it's not like you actually experience a physical body, but in the conventional sense, allowing this to just fully run through the body system, the energetic body, with no blockages, no attempt for control. Because that's all that's sneaking in, is the sense of control, which is actually worse when it's there. In one sense, it's worse when there's nothing in control. So it's like this illusion of control immediately comes with it, the stark reality of no control, helplessness. As you move through this and you integrate. Integrate means trust the experience fully, the physical experience of it fully, trusting the physical experience fully, and trusting your instinct that sometimes noticing a belief will just dissipate it. That's how you move through this, and that's how you integrate. And as you do, I think you'll find that what you initially would have considered energetic restlessness or energetic fear or really unsettling experiences, what you initially sort of interpreted as that, all of a sudden it becomes a very different experience. It becomes this it's like an absolutely raw experience of living moment to moment, all the time, that is absolutely flexible, that is unapologetically human in a very strange way, but it's also completely empty. It has no agendas whatsoever. And that's that raw energy that's been here the whole time that we've been avoiding with layers of identity. And when you first come in contact with it, for lack of a better way of saying it, because it's not easy to say this, but when it's first unfiltered, when the experience is unfiltered for the first time, it can be like, whoa, overcharge, can't handle this. There's no where to build a self to mitigate this experience, and there's no ability to do that, and you know it. But there's still a mistrust of the experience. I'll say it that way. There's still a mistrust of that energy at some level. When that mistrust goes away and you start to actually trust it, you reverse that fundamental ignorance. It's really like a switch that gets flipped. It can happen very quickly. It can happen kind of slowly, but it gets flipped, and it's like what seemed like the most accursed experience, or the thing you've been avoiding your entire existence, that everybody's been avoiding, that all your ancestors have been avoiding. All of a sudden, it's like, holy cow, what I've been avoiding the most, absolutely hiding from myself, creating a self to avoid it, is actually truly, truly liberating. Okay, so that's the overarching message. I want to say a couple other things, because there's really not that much I can say about this, because if you try to introduce will, you might get frustrated. There's no will to introduce, right? But some of these pointers can be helpful, may or may not. Another thing to consider, though, is some kind of somatic practice may or may not be helpful, especially with someone who's very clear or realize themselves. But a somatic practice, meaning something to help regulate or discharge energy, like TRE with Chris Guimond or someone like that. There are other facilitators. There are other modalities too. Maybe some kind of fluid dance, intuitive dance, and intuitive movement. There are a lot of somatic practices, but something that's directly energetic, even a relational one with a very clear, realized person who does some kind of relational energy work can be helpful here. You may or may not need that, but it's something to just consider. And patience, but just let your body feel this. Just let your body feel it. Let the sensation be exactly what it is with no mitigation. But keep a little alert for those beliefs. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much everything I want to say right now. And I'm sure on comments I'll get more questions. I can follow up on those. But yeah. I mean, you've done a lot of work. It's surprising what you can feel at the end of all that work, or at the end of one big aspect of that work, the individual aspect. But like so many things before, as you see this process play out, things get extremely intense, but they also tend to be very transient. So there you go.